The Tao Te Ching by Lao-Tzu. The Tao Te Ching, or more accurately pronounced, the Tao Te Ching, is a fundamental Taoist text written by 6th century Chinese philosopher and sage Lao-Tzu, also spelled lao-tze or lao-tze, all of which translate to Old Master. The meaning of the title is made up of 3 main parts, the first of which is the Tao. The Tao is fundamental to Daoism, and it will be explored in depth shortly. It is translated as the way and points to the essential, unnameable process of the universe that underlies all being, but more on this later. Next, Di, which means virtue, or more specifically, the charismatic virtue or power that one acquires through living in accord with the Tao. Lastly, Jing, which means great book. So overall we can think of the English translation as something like the Book of the Way or Tao and its virtue. But this sounds a little rough, so we usually stick to the original version, the Tao Te Ching. The text is split into 81 very short chapters, and its purpose is to help us intuitively understand and directly experience the Tao in order to live in accord with it. It is not a scientific journal which conceptually defines the Tao, because ultimately the Tao is unknowable and cannot be grasped by the mind. More on this now. This elusive concept of the Tao can roughly be thought of as the way, particularly the way of nature, or the natural order and flow of the universe, also the source of all beings. The Tao is infinite and eternally present. However, all these words and concepts cannot fully encapsulate what is meant by the Tao, because the Tao cannot be defined, it can only be experienced. It is said in the first chapter of the Tao Te Ching that the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Also, in chapter 32, that Tao is ever nameless. So, to experience the Tao, it is important for us to spend more time in awareness rather than in our heads, defining, categorizing and splitting up the world around us into distinct boundaries and mistaking these human-made distinctions for reality. We often confuse the map for the territory. We mistakenly come to believe that the distinctions we make are part of the real world, and thus we forget that everything is part of a much greater whole. Everything works and flows in intimate connection to itself. We become disconnected from our source, and thus we do not live in accord with the Tao. This difference can be better understood by what is known by Taoists as conventional knowledge, such as words, symbols, notations of mathematics and music, as opposed to unconventional knowledge, which means understanding life fully and directly through direct experience and conscious awareness, instead of in abstract linear terms of representational thinking that is so common in the West. The greatest obstacle in experiencing the Tao is our mind. By defining and categorizing and rationalizing everything, we have become trapped by the mind and disconnected from experiencing the Tao. We are so caught up in our illusions that we miss what is right in front of us, the eternal Tao. However, the Tao is so simple that it is deceptive. The Tao is always there, as it is infinite and eternally present, so there is in fact no need for us to set out on some heroic journey to search for it like it is hidden away in some mystical land. We just need to become aware of it in the here and the now. But that is easier said than done, and in order to become present enough to experience this, some Taoists do detach themselves from society and isolate themselves in caves, which is a symbol of a womb, thus signifying a spiritual rebirth of the practitioner. They isolate themselves in these caves in deep meditation in order to become fully conscious of the Tao. One can also practice this by the simple and subtle art of Wu Wei in order to experience the Tao. We'll come more onto this shortly. Another way in which Lao-Tzu points to the nature of the Tao is through his description of Wu, or emptiness, or non-being. In chapter 11 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao-Tzu writes simply, 30 spokes join one hub. The wheel's use comes from its emptiness. Clay is fired to make a pot. The pot's use comes from emptiness. Windows and doors are cut to make a room. The room's use comes from emptiness. We work with the substantial, but their emptiness is what we use. Alan Watts, the brilliant interpreter of Eastern philosophy into the West in the 20th century, alludes to this idea of emptiness well with a comparison. As one's own head looks like nothing to the eyes, yet is the source of all intelligence, so the vague, void-seeming and indefinable Tao is the intelligence which shapes the world with a skill beyond our understanding. Wu Wei, as we mentioned earlier, is another important method of living in accord with the Tao. It can be translated as non-doing, non-action, non-interference, or, most accurately, effortless action. This seemingly paradoxical phrase is actually something that is quite familiar to most of us. The effortless flow of deep work, where you lose yourself in what you are doing and no longer have that sense of being an agent forcibly exerting effort. It comes naturally and effortlessly. To practice Wu Wei is to be fully at ease with what is going on and not going against the natural path of things. Alan Watts uses some useful metaphors for us to better understand Wu Wei. Firstly, he says that Wu Wei is like cutting a piece of wood along the grain rather than going against it. Also, if in a fight, it is using the other person's violence as their own downfall rather than being violent yourself, such as what is used in Judo and Aikido. All of this is to practice Wu Wei. Sailing would be an example of Wu Wei, as it concerns itself with working in accord with the flow of nature, as opposed to something like rowing, where one is acting against it. We get a clearer idea of Wu Wei in chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching, which states, "The highest virtue is to act without a sense of self. The highest kindness is to give without condition. The highest justice is to see without a preference." It is the state without desire or exertion that enables one to experience and live in accord with the Tao. The Tao differs from the Christian concept of God in that the Christian God produces the world by making, whereas the Tao produces the world by not making. Alan Watts, again, describes it well in his book, The Way of Zen, where he states that making implies putting separate parts together, like constructing a machine, whereas the Tao produces the world by not making, or growing, as a better way of thinking about it. When stuff grows, the whole remains a whole, and nothing new is made as such. But the whole can divide into parts. Think about the branches of a tree. There is no planning to this, but rather this growth and production operates according to spontaneity. Spontaneity is an important concept, and in Daoism it is necessary for us not to focus on conventional knowledge, but rather to embody our innate spontaneous intelligence by using it, although without forcing it. We cannot know how to use this, we just use it, we just embody it. Just like we don't know how to move our hand, we just do it. This is the same idea with using our innate spontaneity. When we force stuff and force ourselves to see the world in a particular way, through our societal or cultural values or theoretical and scientific ways of reasoning, we close off our minds to the subtle and profound beauty of what is actually there, because we only view the world through that narrow lens rather than opening ourselves up to the beauty of the whole and embracing the entirety of conscious experience. In essence, we awaken to what is truly there. The sage is another important concept explored in the Tao Te Ching, and can be thought of as simply one who embodies the Tao. The sage, as already discussed, partakes in effortless action, called Wu Wei, and is therefore pliable and supple and not rigid and resistive. They are like water. The sage lives naturally and free from desires, and does not boast or argue or try to prove their point. The sage is able to create peace because they themselves truly know what peace is. One cannot create peace in the world unless they themselves know peace and can embody it. This is a big problem in today's world, as many people are, rightly, eager to create peace in the world, but they themselves are sometimes in internal turmoil and chaos, and so do not truly know how to embody and spread peace effectively. Next, the sage knows that human discriminations create the very problems that they wish to destroy. Human discriminations and dualistic thinking, such as good and bad in morality and beauty and ugly in aesthetics, actually create the troubles and problems that humans experience. For as soon as one says what is good in the world, they create evil, because they exist only in relation to one another. Just like you cannot have one end of a stick without the other, you need both ends. As soon as we say what is beautiful in the world, we create ugliness for the same reason. Thus, the sage does not succumb to these dualistic illusions and lives free from their constraints and is able to see through the limitations of language. Similarly, the sage knows that conventional human knowledge is not the highest form of knowing. Rather, direct experience and a oneness with the Tao is the highest form of both knowledge and awareness. Thank you very much for watching, and be sure to like if you found the video useful and subscribe for later videos. See you next time on Feeling Philosophical, and goodbye.